once you get into a digital space, you are not a South African player anymore, you are a global player.
So the principle is you fail fast, you learn from your mistakes, and you quickly implement and get value.
Their focus, their energies now is on natural language processing. They develop about 2 solutions.
And who's the target market for Qonda?
So the first target market will be the call centers, right? So because what you want to do in call centers is that you want to offload the first call, so that there's no human being involved. If it's a simple request.
Hello and welcome to ITWeb's online channel. My name is Sibahle Malinga and I'm here in Sandton, joined by Jonas Bogoshi, who is the CEO of BCX. Jonas is here to talk to us about research which was conducted by Frost & Sullivan and commissioned by BCX, looking at the state of innovation in South Africa. Jonas, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Thank you, Sibahle, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, let's talk about it. I found today's presentation particularly interesting because it unravels what's really happening in South Africa as far as digital transformation within our SMEs is concerned. So let's talk about what you found was the most surprising findings of this research.
Yeah, thanks, Sibahle. So remember, part of the research was to look at so what is the state of innovation, of digital innovation in the country, and what is very encouraging, right? And I think we had maybe some anecdotal evidence, but now that we've got a research, is that South African companies, private sector companies, have really embraced digital technologies, right? And are probably much faster than we thought. It might be that COVID and the lockdowns have just accelerated that adoption. But when you look at where companies have invested, where they think of investing, I think that's very encouraging, right? So maybe it was anecdotal, but now we can see that. That's the first thing that we are seeing. The one part that is quite clear in the report is that there are some policies in government around digital innovation, but probably they are not at the level of implementation that they're encouraging this digital innovation, just like how other countries are doing it. And I think those are the two things that we must think about, that yes, a lot of innovation, but how does policy from government encourage that and really create world players in South Africa?
Very interesting. So what you're saying is that there are pockets of improvement. We're seeing acceleration in terms of how companies are adopting digital. However, there are still hindrances. As somebody who speaks to organizations on a daily basis, I do know that there's a lot of red tape that comes with implementation of some of these innovative technologies, your automation, your AI. So let's talk about where are the hindrances, because we saw COVID-19 resulting in acceleration of digital transformation initiatives, but what exactly are the hindrances?
Yeah, and let's rather talk about firstly the things that are working well, right? So there are policies in government, especially in Treasury, on how government will encourage innovation and get companies to claim investment in those innovations. It's a long process that you have to follow, but there is a process. So that's a good thing, right? That as companies, I can look at, so do I introduce natural language processing? And at the beginning of that, I can log it with SARS, and I can claim the investment. That's a good thing. What I'm talking about is at the government level, I think we need to have a much bolder a bold statement around how we are going to pin our growth on digital innovation, because that's what the rest of the world is doing. And when I see how the rest of the world is working, is that governments are encouraging investment in digital innovations. They themselves adopt those innovations from the local operators, give them scale, and make sure that they become competitive globally. That's what we require, because when you see this investment happening in South Africa, how do you make it? It's not only beneficial to the organization, but beneficial to the country. That's what I'm talking about in terms of where government must support.
Absolutely. Let's go back now to those challenges that you're finding within, those challenges that we're seeing on the ground as a result of the slow regulatory processes. What are those?
Yeah, so I spoke about the bold vision by government. But part of what is required is that in the environment to create an ecosystem, right? And that ecosystem is around those who do innovation, those who are at universities, because the investors play a big role, and the funding, and make sure that there is a process that really encourages and makes this to we're not at that level yet as a country. But if we go more granular, it's that digital has got lots of implications around trade, around how do we handle trade across borders, etc. And we are not at the level here where that is quite clear around this, right? And it really has to work where government has to look at once you get into a digital space, you are not a South African player anymore, you're a global player. What does that mean in the context of the South African economy? And those are the areas that are slightly more gray that government needs to just make a bold statement on and encourage it to happen.
Wow, interesting. Henrik spoke about how corporate governance is one of the biggest hindrances to digital innovation within South African organizations. Tell us where exactly the pitfalls lie.
It's part of the report that part of the findings is that it's not only a South African phenomenon, but a global phenomenon, right? It's around how old governance structures don't lend themselves easy for something like digital innovation. So typically a corporate governance has to tackle two issues. One is what you centralize as decision making and what you decentralize. And when you do that, you have to have a trade-off between speed and making sure that things are uniform, right? You have to have a trade-off. The challenge with digital innovation is that you're asking for investments, but you're asking for decisions to be made at the outer part of the organization. So what you're asking for is something that does not lend itself easy with corporate governance. You are allowing people to take funding and be able to fail with it, right? Fail fast. That's not typical how we work in organizations. So every year when I look at the budget for the next coming 5 years, when I do a business plan, it's a very simple one, right? So this is the kind of investment that people require, what kind of return are they promising, and we sign it off. But here you must put budget, allow people on the ground to test it and fail, and that's where the challenge is. And ideally, people on the ground are the ones who have to make those decisions, whether it's around efficiencies, new products, or customer experience, and that does not quite lend itself in a traditional corporate governance, and that's what the report is talking about.
So the principle is you fail fast, you learn from your mistakes, and you quickly implement and get value from the technology.
Absolutely right. Yes.
Well, clearly it's easier said than done.
Exactly. Yes.
So I also want to talk, before we talk about what BCX is doing in this area, let's talk about cloud uptake in South Africa. What are the interesting findings from the report?
Yeah, the report aligns with what we are seeing as market data, right? And that is the cloud adoption in South Africa has reached a critical level where a number of organizations are really adopting cloud, whether it's large enterprises, small enterprises, they are adopting cloud. So if you look at the market data, over the next coming 5 years, cloud services are going to grow annual growth rate of about 23%, right, roughly, over the next coming 5 years. So that's a huge growth that we are seeing out of that. And the report shows that a number of large, small, and medium-sized companies have invested in that. I think where we still have to think about is this concept of multi-cloud, right? And the report talks about it. So what do I do? Do I move into my own cloud as an enterprise? Do I move into a hyperscaler? Do I move into a service provider? And how do I make a decision around that? So what the report clearly indicates, which is really a good thing, is that before you move into a cloud, or even if you are there now, it is quite important that we have a path, right? So you must create a path of this is what I'm going to be doing in the next coming 5 years, and make those investments as you move along. Typically, it's very easy to look at, I want to move this workload into a cloud, not looking at the implications of other parts of the business. So a clear cloud strategy and a path is absolutely important. That's what the report is talking about. Those who have done very well is those who have really defined a clear path, and their investments are in line with that.
So now, speaking of cloud and innovation, I know that BCX introduced their innovation unit. What has come out of that? How has the reception been from South African organizations?
So Digital X, it's still almost at its infancy, right? Maybe it's not an infant now, maybe it's a toddler, right? Because it's been there for quite some time. As I said, there are some key solutions that we have developed for the market that comes out of that unit. As an example, the COVID Connect, which is the solution that we worked with National Institute of Communicable Diseases, where we look at how to manage COVID. That's the unit that developed that solution. What they've been doing is over the number of years, as well, the last 2 years, they've also invested in automation solutions with a number of retail customers. Part of what I spoke about earlier today was we launched a solution called AIOps, which is the combination of automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence for service delivery, for IT service delivery. They are the team that developed that solution. And what that does, it helps us to deliver those services more efficiently and differently. So that's what they are busy with. Where they are focusing their energies now is on natural language processing. They are developing about 2 solutions out of that. So where we can, especially for South Africa, where people can use their mother tongue, right, to be able to interact with a machine, right? So you can speak into Zulu, and the machine will listen, will understand, and start a process, right? So there is one solution which we call Conda. It's not there yet. We are still working. On it. So that's what some of the things that the guys are focusing on.
And who's the target market for Conda?
So the first target market will be the call centers, right? So because what you want to do in call centers is that you want to offload the first call, so that there's no human being involved. If it's a simple request, then somebody can call, the machine will understand and be able to service them. So that's the first part. And we are testing it on one of our own call centers, and that will be the target. Ideally, you want to move it into public sector, where people can now access government services using their mother tongue. And that will really close the digital divide, because one of the challenges is not only access to technology, but the fact that you have to speak in English to access those things. So how do you make it normal for people to do it? When people can find it normal that I can call the bank in my own language, I can get my bank statement, I can get whatever without worrying about. That's where we are going. So that managed detection and response is a capability we are building. We will be launching our security operations center, slightly delayed, but we're going to do that and do a 24-hour service for most of our customers in the country. So that's where we are going.
Wow. So is the company looking to increase their security division, perhaps add more team members as a result of the huge demand in your services?
Absolutely. So if I look at, if you were to ask me, so what is our greatest requirement for our security division? Is scale. Because of the requirement, all we need is scale, because the requirements out there are at the level where that's the only way to service them. But I think we can see that increasing going forward.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Sibahle, pleasure talking to you.